The talk is titled Hyperspace Heroes, and my section is Odd Bedfellows. So we stand on the shoulders of giants. Throughout history, discoveries, leads, their influences another. Great advancements can be made when someone thinking outside of the box marries seemingly unrelated ideas or events. The combustion engine wasn't possible without the strangest of bedfellows, Mercedes-Benz in the perfume industry. The atomizer from a perfume bottle regulated the explosions within the gas engine, and then we could have cars. So steps forward can be as simple as a shift in perspective. Sometimes a revolutionary idea happens in an instant, an aha moment, as it did with Marc Pelletier, as you'll discover, hopefully further through this talk. But for right now, who are the odd bedfellows? Well, we have Kepler, a man named Schläfli, a carpet salesman named Paul Donchen. Some of you may know Donald Coxeter, Steve Baer, Marc Pelletier, and Paul Hildebrandt, who are G4G members. The regular polyhedra were known for millennia. It wasn't until the 1850s that Schläfli discovered that the polyhedra existed in dimensions above our own. These are called polytopes. And they were described mostly a bunch of numbers and tables and formulas, and it was just kind of a bus wreck. There weren't any illustrations. So it was the better part of about 80 years before there were any models brought to the public to be viewed. And in the World's Fair, the Century of Progress World's Fair in 1933 in Chicago, the rug dealer named Paul Donchen displayed his models of these polytopes, and that is where Donald Coxeter discovered him. And then after seeing them, he wrote a book called Regular Polytopes. Late in the night, and it also goes to mention that a lot of these models took Paul Donchen many years to make. The first 120 cell was made out of wire, and it took the better part of 3 years to make it. So anyhow, fast forward to the 1970s. Marc Pelletier's high school burns down. Classes were held at a local library. Marc discovers, oh, I forgot about my images. That's great. Sorry, folks. Okay, so these here are the polytopes, the regular polytopes from Coxeter's book in black and white, and then the Zome toy, which is a system, the 31 zone system that Steve Baer had discovered. But we'll get back there here. So yeah, Marc discovered Coxeter's regular polytope books and the Zome Primer at the library. Seemingly unrelated books, but he saw an unlikely connection. He noticed that the polytopes could be constructed with Baer's 31 Zome system. So Marc actually is really pleased with himself, and barefoot sets off hitchhiking from New Hampshire to New Mexico to meet Steve Baer. We're pretty much on their meeting. Next slide. There. Oh, yes. Well, this is, he said it was like, what did he say, Paul? It was like going to the moon?
He'd never been across the Monongahela River. So when he woke up on a bus in New Mexico, he thought he was on Mars.
So, there we go. And so he meets Steve Baer, sees the 31 zone system, which Steve calls broken glass on the highway. And it was, as you saw, let's go back here, that in this picture here, the color picture, you see those rather large balls, and they all have circular holes. So you could actually stick the wrong struts in the wrong holes. So it was pretty unuser-friendly. But Marc had an aha moment, and this is Steve Baer's Zome. This is Steve Baer's Zome Home. Okay, and here's some of the Hyperspace Hero books. Okay. Anyway, so let's see what we got. And this is some drawings from Donchen's notes. So what I did was Marc archived Donchen's notes, which he had gotten from Coxeter. And some of them are over 100 years old, and they've never been viewed by the public. So I pulled out some of what was relevant to this talk, and that was some of the problems we've been having is pulling these images over. Oh, and that's a hypericosa dodeca right there. And these are what people looked at or Donchen even had as reference to build his polytopes, as well as that. and images like this. So these were the types of things that you saw when you read about the polytopes before the models were actually constructed. So imagine making sense of this. And this is a page that I found in Donchin's notes where he actually describes the greater rhombiicosidodecca, which is the Zome ball, which hopefully most of you know is this shape right here. It has 62 faces and represents that 31 zone system, which was the aha moment for Marc because it forced with the shapes to go in the proper directions. And what's interesting is that Donchin actually has a note about this shape, and it reads, a grouping towards one of the hypercubes of the 15 dimensions. So this is a 15-dimensional cube. And here we are at G4G15. And the hypercube of 15 dimensions emanating with the cube and using the 24 quarter points of the surface diagonals to finish the 12 additional directions. And he notes that it's interesting but not too important. But it's actually very important because it builds the universe.